Hey, good evening. I'd like to call the City Council work session of Wednesday, June 14th to order. And first on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Okay, and I'd like to welcome the Planning Commission and the Design Review Board to our meeting also. And we'll start out with public comment. Is there any public comment? No, nothing from the audience. Anybody on Zoom? Okay, great. So tonight's discussion is on an update on the wetland overlay adoption, and Marcy is here and ready to go.
Yes, I'm ready to go. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I'll just dive into the list of things that we're steadily working away on and then let you ask questions. This list was sent to you as part of your packets, bullet list of items. And I'm going to just let you know what the status is of each. We received the draft version from Mickey and sent it off to our own team made up of Ethan Rosenthal, myself, and Keith Leiden. And every one of us has completed an initial review, and we're now synthesizing the results of that. We're kind of holding some of those comments because we also have the land use attorney from the city, Bill Kabiasman, and a second attorney reviewing the ordinance as well, and they haven't completed their review yet. So the next item on the list was follow up with Amanda Punton at DLCD. Unfortunately, she's out on vacation, fortunately for her, but she's out on vacation until the end of next week, but I believe we have a meeting set up with her for next Friday, the 23rd. In her absence, though, I have reached out to City of Florence people and identified a person who worked on that project, and I'm going to try to talk with her within the next few days. She now works at the City of Springfield. And of course, I think we need to coordinate with Amanda Punton generally, but my reason for reaching out to the planner at Springfield who worked on the project is that I do need more understanding of precisely how to format, and deliver that paper that was an example of a white paper or findings or a comparison of the new provisions to the old provisions. So those Amanda and the Springfield planner will be very helpful there. The pop-in notification, we did receive information from Brett Estes, and Robert initiated that contact. And I actually have a little question for Robert while I'm answering this question. We received information from Brett Estes that the code reorganization, so this is related to the whole code rewrite project, that will require a 35-day pop-in notification. It's considered a post-adoption procedure, and they kind of use that notification to collect the draft for their own documentation. And I guess I thought that we had 30, this is the question for Robert. I thought that we had 35 days also for the wetland ordinance pop-in notification, but in reading Brett Estes' email more carefully just now, I see that he didn't specifically answer that question.
Correct. It appears that he's suggesting we talk to Amanda regarding the wetland information. I believe his reply to me was more oriented toward the reorganization portion of this project.
Okay, so we do not know yet the PAPA timeline.
Correct, not for the wetland portion.
Okay,
Can I ask a question?
of course.
Well, when I talked to the the pop-up people, the pop-up people, they gave,
That's okay.
they just had a general timeline that applied to any kind of amendment to an ordinance. So I don't understand where the mystery is. I mean, why it would be different for this than any other change to an ordinance. I'm not following it. I mean, they have a website and they list a period of time that's applicable to this kind. He told me which category this fell under. And there was just a timeline there that was applicable to any kind of change in an ordinance that was substantive. So I'm curious why there's.
Yeah, I think, I'm sorry, but it's Lisa who's speaking, right? I can't.
Yeah, sorry.
It is.
I think, and I think you mentioned earlier that you had spoken to Gordon Howard. And yeah, I don't need to be making a big deal out of this. It's really not that much of a mystery. It probably is 35 days, but I've actually responded to some PAPA notifications, the middle housing code amendments that took place over the last several years. They were 45 or 60 days, I believe. So it's not, it won't be a mystery for long, and it's just the timeline that we have to add into the adoption timeline. From the point of, from this moment to the point that we get this white paper completed and we have completed our review and or any suggested amendments to the wetland overlay that come from our internal team, that'll just be the timeline that to your first hearing. That's all we're trying to establish, is when that lands on your schedule.
Okay, and they did, and I'm given to understand now that you do have to go through the pop-up procedure just for a non-substantive reorganization of the code.
Yes, that's correct.
Huh. Okay. I'm surprised. So that you have to give notification. That's basically to make sure that anyone who objects to it has the opportunity to speak or to voice their objections, right?
Yeah, that there's a public notification that you're holding a hearing on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll just continue to go down through this list. The mapping of the current wetlands and the future changes to wetlands, I believe, is part of the paper or the information that we need to submit. And I think I've heard tentatively from Robert that he can help with those exhibits. And,
Correct.
okay. And then we met Steve Sokolowski and spoke with him about this on Monday at our weekly meeting. And I think that that's the end of my kind of status report. If people would like to hear a little more of a preview of some of the comments that Keith and Ethan provided, I can go into detail, but I don't think it's critical that you hear that unless you want to.
I'd like to.
May I ask a question before you do that, Marcy?
Of course.
So do we go to PAPA? Do we offer notification before we have hearings here and adopt this provision? Or do we adopt and then go to PAPA? How does it work?
You have to send the material to PAPA, so it would be the white paper and the proposed ordinance. And then you wait 35 days or whatever the requirement is, and to hold your hearing. You provide that amount of time for members of the public to review the material.
Okay. Sorry, I missed that. Thank you.
Sure.
And is it 35 days or 35 business days or?
I think it's 35 days, calendar
Actual days. Okay, thank you.
There any other questions before I just give you a brief summary of the comments?
No, I can't remember who Keith Lighton is.
Keith Leiden is the Herbsworks team member for the code audit and the code rewrite.
Okay.
Been participating for the same amount of period.
Right. I remember. Yes. I just couldn't remember the name.
He's a certified planner and or with a lot of experience, and he's a municipal planner for a number of cities as well.
And Mr. Rosenthal is the person who we all talk to.
He's the person that we added specifically for the wetland ordinance.
But he's not a wetlands attorney.
No, he's a ecologist who specializes in the technical issues around wetlands and estuary lands and.
Okay.
So some of the comments that Ethan provided had to do with just being really consistent about definitions. And they were less planner-ease technical. I don't think they will be difficult to implement. Keith's comments were much more substantive and had more to do with organization and clarification of different pieces of the writing. For example, he talks about how the criteria section could be sorted through, because some things are actually, let's see, where does he say this? The approval criteria are, some are submittal requirements and some are ongoing maintenance items. So we would want to clean that up. And he also suggests that it could follow a more logical order, because it sometimes restates provisions. He suggests a progression like the purpose, the applicability, definitions, and what a wetland lot of record is, the application review process, application submittal requirements, code adjustments, approval criteria, and ongoing maintenance requirements. So that's just the order. We would just take the items and kind of clean them up and order them accordingly. So I believe we want to go through that process of it would be kind of like a mini version of what we're going to do to your entire code, a policy neutral reorganization. So we would go through a policy neutral reorganization of this one chapter. Are there any questions about that?
I think it sounds like a great idea. We started with what existed, and I agree that, like the rest of our code, it was not entirely logical. So it would be wonderful if you could do that.
Exactly. And you're starting with the kind of current organization, and you just worked within that, it would not be very well organized.
Right.
That is the status of the wetland ordinance. We still, as I'm sorry to say, we still don't know precisely when the hearing will have to be yet, but we should know that, I think, very soon, within the next week.
It didn't sound to me that substantively Ethan or Keith had any issues with the substance of what was presented, correct?
That's generally correct. I should bring up that there's some concern now. We may hear more about this on the land use attorney's side as well, about the degree of conditional use permitting for various procedures. That might call some attention by DLCD representatives and others. But there's no proposal right now amongst the Ethan and Keith and Marcy team to change that. We have talked, there may be some caution coming from the land use attorney about that. And we talked a little bit about what will happen if we hear that from them. And our approach is that we would try to still adopt it as is, even with a conditional use, with it leaning quite a lot on conditional use approvals. and try to address it once we undertake the procedures phase of our code rewrite project. I'm not sure that if that makes sense, if any, but to do people could, it does.
Mhm.
Okay,
What,
good.
what timeline would that be, Marcy, then, if you did that?
When would we get to the procedures phase of the code rewrite?
Mhm.
I think it's going to be in September.
So what you're saying is you would put off the code revision for wetlands until then?
No, we would adopt it as is, but then we would try to, no, we're going to try to adopt this this summer,
Okay,
but we would I would recommend that we come back around when we're talking about procedures for the entire code, and we address the procedures for wetlands, along with the discussion of the procedures for every other land use action.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
I think that makes a lot of sense. It would be strange if you didn't include the wetland overlay zone in your process of reorganizing and clarifying procedures.
Yeah. Was there anything else that I can offer this evening?
I would love to hear when you do know what format that white paper will be or findings or how intensive that process is going to be and what they'll need, just out of my own curiosity.
I will definitely let you know, and I will let you know how long it's going to take us, and then we'll just add that PAPA notification period onto it, and then we'll have our date,
Great.
our window. Yeah, we're all anxious for that too.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I hope you have a nice evening. We've had just a short little update for you this time, so enjoy the rest of your evenings.
thank you.
Okay, let's make sure there's no questions. Any other questions from anyone? Okay, thank you, Marcy.
You're welcome. I will see you in July, and I will talk to you. I'll be giving you updates via staff in the meantime.
Great. Okay,
Bye.
thanks. Hey, is there anything for good of the order?
Oh,
Go ahead.
when do we anticipate meeting again, or if we don't need to,
For the wetlands?
for this type of?
I thought we had another meeting in
July. We've got another one in July.
Okay.
But I think that's that's all of the code.
Right, it'll be July, isn't it the 11th or something? Yeah.
And there's another effort coming from another social club who's working on trees, and we have exchanged some language, so, at some point, within a month or two, we'll be knocking at this.
Right, but that's going to channel first through to the parks.
Yeah, we
Right.
promised Stacy that everything starts there. And
Yeah. Great, good. And has everyone had a chance to meet our new community development?
A lot of you, I haven't had an opportunity to meet you guys. So nice to meet you again, Steve Sokolowski. Hi, Steve Sokolowski. Nice to meet you.
You have any?
No, I guess the only thing I would have to comment is it seems like a good time for someone new coming in during the time that the ordinance is being updated. So from that perspective, I think it's going to be helpful from my end, that I'm learning along with you guys and using the most up-to-date information to go from here on out. So thank you.
Hey,
Can I mention one thing since this is so short?
oh, sure. We're gonna get out of it longer. Go longer
I
than.
don't think Marcy needed to hear this, but I've mentioned this to Lisa and I've mentioned it to Mickey. That in looking at the wetlands ordinance, particularly the portions about pedestrian trails. I had a concern that it seemed that I didn't see anything that would allow the city to restore or maintain a wetlands trail. And I'm particularly thinking of the one on the north bank of Ecola Creek.
It's an existing use, it would be grandfathered in. And you're allowed to maintain an existing use under the way that we've written the code so far. Who knows how it ends up? But so I think right now what you could say is this trail is an existing use and needs to be maintained to be functional.
I just thought that the fill provisions would,
And so then the question is, are you filling in the wetland itself? So is the trail actually through the wetland or is it in an area adjacent? Likely, most of those trails that you're thinking of are not active wetland because usually the wetland's too boggy to have a permanent trail through. So I think in that case, the fill provisions are specific to the wetland itself, not the wetland overlay zone. So that's unlikely to be
Okay.
probably a concern.
yeah, there are places where that trail is worn down.
Yes, I know, it's very deep. So I think that most of that would be buffer. And in that case, it's an existing use that could be made.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you. That
Yeah.
make me feel better.
I don't personally hear that and think, oh, that wouldn't be allowed.
okay, I will take that as some assurance.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good news. Anything else? I'd just like to remind everyone that this Saturday from 10 till noon, we're having a Scotch broom busting party starting at Les Shirley Park. And gonna cut down that Scotch broom only from 10 till noon. And if we get done early, we go early. So love to have some of you there.
And there is coffee with the counselors
Right.
next Monday at 10 o'clock. And you are going to be
On Zoom.
on Zoom, okay. So coffee with counselors, 10 o'clock.
Okay, anything else? Okay, meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
That's-